Welcome to the Snapback Life podcast, where resilient women come to reclaim their power, heal from trauma, and step into their most authentic selves. I'm your host, Jacinth Dada, your snapback from trauma to triumph life coach. And I'm here to guide you on your journey to healing and empowerment. In each episode, we dive into personal growth, overcoming adversity, and building a life that reflects your true potential. Stick around until the end for some exciting resources and opportunities to further your journey. Let's snap back and thrive together.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Snapback Life with Jacinth Dada. I do pray that you're having a beautiful day. This is like my second or third attempt to begin the Snapback Life discussion today. And I am actually in South Florida, spending a day or two with my parents, and then we'll be traveling for some R&R. But I came out because I said I wanted to do the live on the outside because it's so beautiful, and it wasn't, it isn't as hot as normal. There's a little breeze. The sky was so clear earlier, but now it's like the rain was trying to come. So when I started it at 12, the rain started to drizzle, and I ran inside. I had to stop the live and run inside. So I made another 2 attempts, and then, finally it looks like it stopped. So hopefully I can finish our discussion today on the Snapback Life without any rain. I'm just praying that the Lord will hold the rain until we're done. So I just wanted us today to talk about a topic that it's so pivotal in this season that we're in. We just came out of the election, and, there's so many emotions that are going around, but one of the things before we dive into the subject of fulfilling your purpose in a time of change, I wanted to just encourage each and everyone that God is still sovereign. And no matter who is in the highest office in this United States of America, as believers in Christ, as women, we have a responsibility to pray for those in leadership. It might not have been the person that you voted for. It might not have, and it might be the person that you voted for. But no matter what it is, we have a responsibility. The Bible says that we should pray for all those that have authority over us so that we can live a peaceful life. And authority is authority. And the Bible even goes back and say that every authority that we have is designed by God, So in this season of change, let's be mindful of what we are saying. Let's be mindful of being critical, and take the time to pray for those that are getting ready now to step into the leadership of this nation. There is a changing of the guard that has happened, and whether we like it or not, we have to be mindful and to understand that God has a purpose in everything. So the discussion that I wanted to talk about today was fulfilling our purpose in times of change. And, I talked on our last discussion about, at the beginning of the year, I made an intentional decree that I wanted to read 2 books per month for the year of 2024. And I'm a little bit behind, but I am still doing it. So right now I'm reading two books, right? The one of the book, the title is The Garden Within by Dr. Anita Phillips. And it is a powerful book. I would encourage you to buy that book. And another book that I started reading was by Dr. Miles Monroe, and it's called The Principles and Benefits of Change. The Principles and Benefit of Change. And today, ladies, I'm going to be talking from this book because it is so apropos. And what I am going to be talking about is going to be extrapolated from this book, right? I'll put my own twist to it, but the majority of what we're going to be saying is going to be extrapolated from this book by the late Dr. Miles Monroe. Oh my God. And I'm sure this book was written over 10 years ago. And it is so fitted for the season that we're in. I don't know, what do you think about change? One of the things that I've read and understand is that change is inevitable. And the only constant in life, the only thing that never changes is change. That never change. The only thing that is permanent, that's what I want to say. The only thing that is permanent is change. Is change. So let's dive into this. And I encourage each and every one who views this Snapback Life chat, I am hoping that you will order this book if you don't have it. And if you have it in your library, I ask you to pull it out and begin to read this book. And we're going to start with the preface when he talks about nothing is permanent as change, right? Understanding this paradoxical helps us to be able to navigate the changes of life. And I love the way Dr. Monroe just penned this book. It is timeless. He says everything is a constant state of change. Everything is in a constant state of change. And nothing can stop it. Listen, you cannot stop change. I cannot stop change. The person in the highest office in this nation cannot stop change. Change is both evidence that we are alive. It is the proof that we are finite, because everything has its own season and nothing on this earth lasts forever. I mean, do you love that? Nothing in this world lasts forever. We're just going to dive into it, and later we're going to pick up on some of the principles that he talks about in the book. He talks about 4 types of change, and we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the 4 types of change that Dr. Miles Monroe spoke about in his book, The Principles of Change. And I don't want to lose my space here because there were some really good things that I wanted to touch on. And you know, as we're talking about change, I want you for a moment to think about where you are now, how the world was 20 years ago, and how it is now. And not only the world, but you as an individual. What are some of the changes that have happened in your life that was inevitable, right? Think about that. And how did you navigate through the changes, whether it's your age, because every day we're aging. That is a change in life that we have no control of. No control. But guess what? As we age, we have to adapt. And not only that, we have to prepare for the changes that we go through, even in our own bodies. And how do we prepare for that? We prepare ourselves by being aware of our circumstances, being aware of how our bodies, what our bodies are saying, right? So change is not only on a national or community base. Change is not only on a global scale. Change is not only in science, technology, education. Change happens also within us. And I believe that when we understand that change is inevitable, we will live our lives in preparation for change. Ladies, let's dive into this. Let me tell you, I was so excited when I started reading this book because it's a book that has been in the market for decades, but now it has a fresh perspective because of the times that we're living in. And he says this: many people were not prepared for changes, right? And I'm going to give my little twist on this. He said when change comes, a lot of times we enter into change with so many mindsets: suspicion, contempt, violence. And while others simply surrendered to the inevitable and became victims of the element of change, other people are moving with the change because they understand that it is inevitable. So let's look back. He says, let's look back at the corridors of history, because we understand that history is the litmus test to how change is inevitable. There's various strategic points in history, and he talks about transitional periods that occurred in time. For example, the Dark Ages, right? The Age of Enlightenment, times of exploit. When we talk about Christopher Columbus, that's one change. The change of the Western expansion of Europe and the Americas, colonization, slave trade, World War I and World War II. And even before World War I and World War II, we had the birth of the Republic of the United States of America, right? And it talked about the creation. This is another aspect of history: the creation of the United Nations, the birth of the nation of Israel, the civil rights movement, the decline of communism, the expansion of Islam, the birth and growth of the new Eastern religions, and the emergence of international terrorism. And let's not only stop there, also domestic terrorism. These are the changes throughout the corridors of history. So we should not be caught off guard when there is change. The world truly, he says in this book, the world has become a global village. And what does he mean by that? We are worlds apart, but even though we're worlds apart, we are a world that is together. Because now with technology, and that's another change that has evolved over the decades, right? I remember the days that I can remember as a teenager at home. We had one phone in the house, one phone. You had to dial, and then that evolved that you had the touch tone and the touch button phones, and it has evolved. Computers were massive, right? Computers were massive. Now your computer is in the palm of your hand. Those are the changes that has transpired over the centuries, over the decades, while we have been alive. So change is inevitable, but our purpose remains constant no matter what the change is. The vision might change, but the purpose that God has created us for remains the same. The Bible says that we are called to be light and salt in this earth realm. So when change occurs, it is for us as women, right, who call the name of Jesus, women of faith, to believe that God is still sovereign, and no matter what is happening, God has a purpose. So change is in the air. It is everywhere, right? And he says here, everyone with a measure of discernment, spiritual insight, and has an historical perspective can sense a historic conversion in every sphere of life. It's everywhere. Change is even happening with you, with me, with our children, in our community, right? And he talks about in the book the principles and benefits of change, right? This is the title of the book. Fulfilling your purpose, right, is possible in unsettling times. And he talks about, and remember I said I'm extrapolating from the book by the late Dr. Miles Monroe, because I feel that it is so apropos for this season that we're in. We look at the world, we look at worldwide and personal challenges as we face today with a sense of awe, with a sense of dread, right? But in reality, we must look at the glimmer of hope that is within every change that occurs in our life and in our lifetime, right? It will take for us to be able to grasp the change that this world is going through, the birth pangs. The Bible says that the earth groans, right, for the manifestation of the righteous, for the manifestation of the children of God. And what that tells me is that the world is in labor. It is groaning for us to be able to manifest the purposes of God in this earth realm. He touches on the 21st century, which he calls the age of 10 things, right? 10 things that are happening in the 21st century. And as I said earlier, he wrote this book a long time ago. Dr. Miles Monroe is no longer with us, but the words and what he talked about are still relevant today, 2024. He said that the 21st century will be known as the age of, number one, globalization. And we see that, right? And that's what I mean, what he meant when he said that the world is truly a global village. And number two, the 21st century is an age of information. It is also an age of communication, an age of mobilization, cultural diversification, mergers and networking, longevity of life. And we see that. We see people, individuals are living longer and are living even more healthy, right? It is an age of technology, number 8. Number 9, it is an age of social and political transition. And we are in that age right now of social and political transition. And number 10, he talks about an age of rapid transformation. This is a paradigm shift that is taking place. And it's not only taking place in one aspect, but he lists 10 areas where there is change. It is a paradigm shift that is happening in these arenas that he talks about, right? Social and political transition, rapid transformation, globalization, information, communication, mobilization, cultural diversification, mergers, networking, people living longer, and technology. Think about technology. Now we're in a world of artificial intelligence. And ladies, it is not going to recede. It is just going to morph in something bigger, bigger, bigger. But it's for us not to fear change, but to harness change and to be able to triumph through change. See how we can evolve and how we can use change to fulfill our purpose on the earth. He says here, this is a quote, on a global scale as well as on a personal one, we must be prepared for transformation. We must be prepared for the change that is inevitable. It is inevitable. Change is inevitable. But God has a purpose in the changes that we go through. Let's talk about 4 types of change that the late Dr. Monroe talks about in his book, The Principles and Benefits of Change. He highlighted 4 specific changes that happens in our lifetime and as an individual, right? Number 1, change that happens to us. There are changes that happens to us as individuals that are unexpected or anticipated change that affects our personal lives. It affects our families. It affects our career. And it goes on and on, right? The second change that happens is change that happens around us, right? Unexpected or anticipated change that affects our society, it affects our nation, it affects our world. And it also has some impact on us personally. Because whenever there's change around us, once we're living and once we're breathing, that change is going to affect us, right? Then the third type of change that he talks about is the change that happens within us. Unexpected or anticipated change that directly affects who we are. This is the change that he's talking about that affects us on the inside, whether it is physical, emotional, mentally, or spiritual. These are some of the changes that affects us on the inside, right? Whether there's a diagnosis, we're tired, whatever that change is, it affects our human body, right? And we know that the human body consists of spirit, soul, and body. And the changes that happens on the inside of us affects those areas of our lives. And the 4th change that he talks about is the change that we initiate. What are some of the changes that we can initiate? What are some of the changes that we initiate, right? Something created or altered by plans we have implemented in our own life, right? For example, when it comes to self-care, when it comes to living a healthy life, listening to our bodies, right? Doing the things that we know are going to give us longevity. Not only just longevity, but healthy longevity, right? If you are, you know that you're eating things that are not good for your body, then we make the changes, we make the adjustments that we can be healthy, right? So those are some of the changes, the 4 types of change that he talks about in the book, in his book, The Principles and Benefits of Change. And in his book also, in this book, he talks about 5 principles of change, right? There's 4 types of change, right? The change that happens to us, the change that happens around us, the change that happens within us, and the changes that we initiate in our lifetime on a daily basis, right? In different seasons of our lives. So let's talk about the 5 principles of change that Dr. Miles Monroe talks about. He says that number 1, nothing on earth is a permanent change. When I read this, it caused me to pause, because a lot of times we are in situations or things are happening, even the things that we hold dear, we think it is permanent, right? That we're going to hold on to this for a lifetime, right? But one thing that's always present, he says, on earth is change. That is a constant. Change is a constant. Nothing else can really be expected or guaranteed other than change. Think about this, right? And the second principle of change is continual. Our lives keep moving forward, right? The environment changes, our circumstances changes. Change doesn't stop when we sleep. And we know that even when we're sleeping, there's changes in our bodies. Our brains are rejuvenating, our body is healing. So even when we're sleeping, there are changes that are happening not only around us, but even within our own bodies, right? Change doesn't stop when you take a vacation. It doesn't stop when you take a lunch break. Change is ceaseless. And let's pause there for a moment. Because change is ceaseless, that's why God encourages us to pray without ceasing. And I believe that when we are a people of prayer, what happens is that we are able to tap into what is about to happen. We might not know the full measure of what is about to happen, but the Bible also tells us that God does nothing on the earth unless he reveals it to his prophets, right? Not only to his prophets, but he reveals it to his servants. He reveals it to those that are living in his presence. Prayer allows us to tap into, and not only to tap into, but to prepare for the changes in our lives, in our environment, and in our nation, and globally. The third principle of change that he talks about in this book is everything changes. The details of our lives change on a constant. We're always in some form of transition. Change is inevitable, and everything in life changes. Your knowledge changes, right? Because as we grow, we are constantly consuming knowledge. And the more knowledge we have, our perspective change. Knowledge causes us to live life with different lenses. Knowledge helps us to make the change, to make the shift in our lives that will propel us in our purpose. It also helps us to be able to handle changes, right? New knowledge will change your perspective, he says, or broaden or deepen your original ideas. How often do we have beliefs? 10 years ago, you might have believed something, right? And as you are exposed to knowledge, as you are exposed to different things and different people, different countries, culture, right? Different ideology, as you are exposed to the Word of God, then what it does, it deepens your understanding and what you thought about, your original ideas. Change, what it does also, your interests will change. Remember, we're saying that everything changes. Your interests will change. Your values and priority will change. Your body will change. Your family relationships and networks will change, right? Think about even, as I even pause here for a moment, and when it talks about the fact that your interests will change. There were things 10 years ago that I was interested in, and as as I progressed in life, as I understood and my knowledge changed, those things that meant so much to me, those dreams, some of those dreams I had to be shifted, right? Because of my knowledge. Sometimes the things you are interested in today may change tomorrow as you expand in your experiences. So our experiences in life causes our interest to change. The foods that you used to eat, that you loved. I remember I used to love mangoes, right? Now I still eat it a little bit, but now I'm very leery of it, because when I eat it, what happens? I get nauseous. So the idea of having mangoes and the excitement for me is no longer there, because my body has changed, my taste has changed, my palate for mangoes has changed. Do you understand? So your values also will change, and your priorities, right? But one thing remains constant and should remain constant is your core values, right? The things that you value. This may change. Our values and our priorities may change, because as individual we mature, right? When your values change, it can change your whole lifestyle. This is what he's saying, and that is so important. When our values and our interests changes, and remember, we're not talking about our core values, we're talking about just values on a broad scope. When that changes, your lifestyle changes, right? Your body change. Our bodies will change. Think about it. The things that interest us and how we looked 20 years ago, we might not look there's no way we're going to look the same, because the body is changing. We're aging with every second of the day, right? Your size is going to change. Your physical structure is going to change. Your ability to do certain things will change. I mean, I was talking to my husband the other day, and my kids, and I was saying that, I mean, probably even 5, 7, 8 years ago and beyond, I remember I would be able to multitask, to do so much, go to work 12, 14 hours, come home, cook, do all kinds of things, and I'm still going like an ever-ready battery. And I understand now that the things I was able to do and multitask and do all kinds of things, and I can't do as much now, because I was saying I do one task and that's enough. Certain things I do for the day is enough, right? And what happens in those seasons? You have to understand, you are not what you used to be, right? You were able, and I was able, to get up and clean my house from top to bottom, finish, do laundry, cook, clean, prepare for the next day, prepare for the next week. And I find that now I have to slow down. And I'm not angry about it. It is the season of change. And when you are preparing for the change, let me tell you, you harness life. You enjoy life, because what? You are enjoying the moment of change. When it is prepared for, you're able to enjoy it, even when it comes with its ups and downs, right? So that's another change that is inevitable. Your family, your relationships, your network, he says, will change, right? As your children get older, the relationship changes, right? As you mature, relationships that you thought were so important, you realize that it's not important. And you move on to other relationships that are going to help you grow, that is going to expand and to align you with your purpose. So change is not always evil. It is not always something that should be dreaded, right? Your marriage will change. The dynamics of your relationship in marriage will change. Because guess what? As individuals, we're changing. Okay? And he gives an example here. He says, perhaps the husband has been the breadwinner of the family for 20 years and suddenly he's laid off. This is just examples that happens to us on a daily basis. And now as the wife, you have to pick up the slack. Right? That's a change. That's a life change. Your children will change. Like we said, we think about them as infants, toddlers, school age. Now they're teenagers, adults, right? My youngest child is 30. And the way I communicated with her when she was in high school, middle school, elementary is totally different now, right? Because we're both maturing. We're still maturing, right? So the dynamics that we had is now different, right? When your children mature and desires independence, you have to learn to handle the change. And not only learn, you have to be skilled in the changes that they are going through while you're going through your changes. Your friends will change. Your job will change, right? How many of us have the same job we had when we were teenagers? How many of us have the same job that we had when we were in our 20s and 30s? Not many of us. But we knew that change was inevitable because guess what? We knew how to prepare for the next season of our lives as far as our career and our profession. Ladies, change is inevitable. Never, he says this, we must come to acknowledge that change is inevitable. Life is full of expected and unexpected changes. And the more we adapt, the more we embrace change, I believe that our lives will be more progressive, our lives will be more purposeful as we acknowledge the fact that change is inevitable. And when we prepare for change, like I said earlier, it makes it easy for us, right? He says here, change is a principle of life and creation. It is the principle of life and creation. This last statement is really what he's saying is a conclusion of everything that he has touched on, the different types of change, right? Change, he says, is a human equalizer. Think about that. Change brings us on an equal platform in certain situations. These principles of change, he says, highlight the fact that change is a human equalizer. Nobody, no one, no government, no institution has a monopoly on change. Think about that. So no matter what is going on in our nation and globally, ladies, no one person, no one system, no one nation, no one leader has a monopoly on change. And even, let's bring it to our own personal lives. None of us have a monopoly on change. Our bodies will change. Our perspective will change. Today I always say this, today is a beautiful day. And one of the things I've learned over the decades of life, and it's very important, is to enjoy today. Whatever is going on, find that nugget of light. Find that nugget of peace. Find that nugget of good in today. Because guess what? Yesterday, I was at home in Georgia. There's nothing I can do about what happened yesterday, right? And today, I'm in sunny South Florida, basking in the sun and just enjoying a few hours with my parents before I travel. Enjoy today. Every aspect of today, enjoy. Tomorrow, yes, we have plans for tomorrow. We have plans for the future. And it is a wise person that plans for tomorrow. But we must understand that we must live in today. Enjoy today. Enjoy the blessings of today. Because even in a 24-hour, even in a 24-hour day, changes can happen. Changes can happen that are inevitable. But tomorrow is another day that is not promised. So enjoy today and understand that no one has the monopoly on change. And I'm going to conclude here because I wanted to tap on one of the things he talks about in his book, The Principle. If you're joining or if you're watching, and whenever you're watching this chat, I'm talking and I'm extrapolating from some of the principles in the book by the late Dr. Miles Monroe called The Principles and Benefits of Change. It is an awesome book, and I would encourage you to buy that book if you don't have it in your library and to read it. Oh my God, it's very empowering, right? So I wanted to end our chat dealing with one of the things he talks about towards the end of his book. He titles this The Change. Change is one of a leader's greatest assets. When I read this, I realized it is a truth. It is a fact that whether you're leading at home, and I believe that every one of us are called to some capacity of leadership, whether you're a mom, a wife, whether you have your own business, whether you're in corporate America, in healthcare, in technology, wherever you are, we all are called to some capacity of leadership. And he is saying to us that one of the greatest assets for a leader is change. He says here, it is impossible to lead without change. So change is one of the leaders, one of your greatest assets as a leader. The success or the failure of any leader might be measured by how they respond, by how they oversee or benefit from change. Every nation, he says here, an organization, as well as us as individuals, must cultivate the ability to respond to effective change. He says this is why groups, companies, and countries, like individuals, must engage in campaigns of self-development. So here's what I understand from this, from what he's saying, is that I think a lot of times when we don't, or let me put it this way, when we fear change primarily because we fail to develop ourselves. And I think it's so important. And for me, that's a culmination also of self-care, right? When you are constantly developing yourself, and basically, simply put, it's growth. When we are growing, our perspective change. When we are growing and we're developing who we are, we do not fear change. We embrace change. And change, we know, it's not always what we anticipate. It's not always what we want. But because we're in a constant a constant motion of change and self-development, we're able to harness the change that we're experiencing. One of the former president of AT&T says this: when the pace of change outside an organization becomes greater than the pace of the change inside the organization, the end is near. And it doesn't only apply to an organization, whether you're an entrepreneur, whatever you do as a leader. If the change on the outside of your business or the corporation that you're in, but let's bring it on a personal level. When the change on the outside of us, in our community, in our nation, globally, right? When the change is greater than the pace in which we are changing as an individual, that, in my opinion, is a setup for depression, oppression, and hopelessness. But when we decide, when we are intentional about changing our lives, when we are intentional about developing ourselves, caring for ourselves, taking those moments of rest, educating ourselves on what is happening around us, and not only around us, but globally, then we are fitted for the task of change. He says here, both personal and corporate life, then leadership is ultimately about change. I mean, we don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that change is inevitable. He talks here about, I don't want to miss this. He gives, I think it's like 5 or 6, 10. He gives 10 examples, right, of change as an asset for leaders. And I want to flip that, and I want to say these 10 assets, I want us as women to embrace these assets that Dr. Miles Monroe talks about in his book. He said, as a leader, as a woman, I'm putting this in our, I'm talking to us. This is for us as women, because I believe that, God is he's so amazing. And when we understand the power that we have in this earth realm as women, we will begin to change the way we think and to understand and to begin to move in the power that God has given us as women. That we are able to make changes, but those changes must first begin with us. So let's just tap into the 10 assets of a leader that he talks about. Number 1, leaders must expect change. Leaders are always and should always be aware that nothing is permanent except God and his promises. Think about that. The only thing that is unchangeable is God and his word, his promises to us. This means that they must live in a continuum of expectation, an expectation that life and things will change. The second asset of a leader when it comes to change is number 2, leaders initiate or create change. If you are a leader, you're always living in tomorrow, because your mind, your imagination is not only in this moment. You enjoy this moment, but you're always thinking, how can I do this better? How can I make this better for my family? What can I do to bring a change in my community? What can I do as a woman to bring change in my lifetime, in my sphere of influence, right? It is impossible to lead while staying where you currently are. These are some of the things that he talks about in this book. And let me tell you, I wanted to take this day to really share on this because I believe it is so powerful. And what it has done for me, it has empowered me. And not only that, it has lit a fire under me to understand that I have, as a woman in this nation, and wherever you're listening from, as a woman, you have the power to empower, and you have the ability to change in a changing world and to make life better, not only for you, but to bring value to someone else, right? We cannot lead if we're staying where we are. We cannot lead when we're maintaining what we have. It's good to maintain, but nothing is constant. Even fashion changes, the way we look changes, right? We cannot lead if we're maintaining what you have, assuming that someone else will initiate change, expecting someone else to tell you what to do. Be that agent of change. You cannot lead if you're waiting for the future. You are the future. You are the future. The future is within us. The future is in our imagination. We are living in this world. We're enjoying certain material things and certain aspect of life because someone was living in the future. Someone was seeing where we are today, probably 100 years ago, right? A true leader does these things. A true leader provides the vision of the preferred future. What is the future that you want for yourself? What is the future that you want for your children? What is the future that you want for your family? What is the future that you want for your community, your nation, your church? What is the future that you want? That future is within you. A true leader, he says, initiates a change of direction. When you are a true leader, you change the trajectory of not only your life, but the lives of those that are in your sphere of influence. A true leader sets the pace. A true leader, in my opinion, a true leader is not concerned about how people perceive you. Because let me tell you, the road that is traveled less is the road that ultimately brings change. The Bible talks about the narrow way, the narrow road, and the wide road. It says a few people walk on that narrow path, but there are many people walking on that broad road that leads to destruction. Right? So when God gives you a vision, when he gives you a dream, harness it, hold it, and begin to activate it. Because a lot of people die with dreams that was not actualized. Right? But we are now in the land of the living. There's so many changes that are happening. But what is the dream that God has given you as a leader in your home, a leader on your job, a leader in your business, a leader as a wife, a mother? What is that vision that God has given you that will be a legacy, that will be, the change that someone else needs? You set the pace as a leader. A true leader, ladies, encourages participation in reaching that goal. And he says here, and I love this, he said, the leader leads by creating the next step towards the future. Right? The third one, he says, the third asset to change when it comes to leadership is leaders interpret change. When I saw that, I paused, because this is so true. It is a fact. As a leader and a person that has the ability to lead, whether you're leading 2 people or millions of people, right? As a leader, when change happens, when it occurs, you're able to interpret that change. And how do we do that as women, especially women of faith? When we are prayerful, when we are tapping into the power of God, when change comes, ladies, we must be able, and God will equip us and give us discernment. He will give us spiritual insight on how to interpret the change that we are living in. The essence, he said, they always seek the good in every situation. That's a true leader. The change might not be what we want. The change might not be what you anticipated. But a true leader, a woman that is in touch with change, in touch with what is happening, not only around you, but around, inside of you, is equipped to seek the good in every situation. And the fourth he talks about, he said, leaders guide change. You guide the change. And the fifth, leaders plan and design change. I want to tap into this. He said, leaders create strategies that are regulated by their visions in order to take their groups, in order to take their organization to the future they aspire to. So as a leader, you're always strategizing. You're always thinking of ways to take the next generation into their future, to take your children into their future. The Bible says that a people perish because of lack of knowledge. And we are not those women who are perishing. Because guess what? God has given us strategies and keys and insight how to lead not only ourselves, but our families, our nation, those in our sphere of influence into the future. He says a leader is a leader because he or she has already visited the future in his or her mind. This is revolutionary. Because a lot of times our imagination runs wild. You know, growing up, your mother would or your father would say, "Don't let your imagination run wild." But that was not a good statement. We must allow our imagination to run wild, because that is how God, I believe, speaks to us in the realm of the spirit. Our imagination is our ability to live on a different atmosphere, to live on a different dimension. It is powerful. It is powerful. Leaders do not just stumble in the future. I had this highlighted and crossed out, and I wanted to share this, right? Leaders do not stumble in the future. The snapback for me is not something I stumbled in. God gave the snapback life to me concept, right? Probably, I think it was like 5 years ago. And it took a while. I could not rest. And I mean, I was working on this, allowing God to birth this thing in me. Because the thing about this is that when God gives you a vision and he gives you a mandate, he gives you an assignment, oftentimes it's not about you. You are just an instrument. You're just a vessel that God is using to bring about change in the lives of those in your sphere of influence. So, as leaders, you do not just stumble in your future. You did not just stumble in that job. You did not just stumble where you are. It has been something that has been in your imagination, right? Since the future demands change, leaders must design the series of changes that are necessary to make their ways and the ways for others, it's inevitable. And he gives the story of um, Joseph in the Bible. If you're someone that reads the Bible talks about Joseph, right? When he was brought into Egypt with by his brothers who didn't like him, and he was always dreaming, right? Sometimes when he came around, they acknowledge him as, here comes the dreamer, let us kill him, right? So we see from ancient days, God spoke to a lot of individuals through dreams. God would show them what would happen decades ahead of their time. And not only that, that they would have a part to play in the change that is coming. God warned the Egyptian Pharaoh through a dream also of what was coming to Egypt, that there will have 7 days of famine, 7 years of famine, and 7 years of plenty. And this Hebrew boy, at a young age, God gave him dreams. And God allowed him to be captured and enslaved in Egypt, not knowing that God had a purpose for him, that he would be the second leader in Egypt to not only help himself, but to protect his family, right? For what was to come. He had the insight and the intellect that was given to him by God to prepare for the famine that was coming. And I believe that we are going to be entering in some difficult times in this nation. But I believe as women, powerful women, women of prayer, we have the responsibility to begin to prepare ourselves, to prepare our families through the medium of prayer and through what is necessary to prepare ourselves and the next generation for the change that is going to come. Right? Then he talks about the sixth one, and I'm going to hurry up here because I can go on and on. The sixth asset to leadership when it comes to change, he says leaders prepare themselves for change. And that's what we just talked about. Leaders prepare themselves for change. After accepting the responsibility and embracing the obligation of our God-given assignment, the leader makes the necessary changes, whether spiritually, emotionally, personal, professional, educational, or social, to develop the skills that are necessary for the journey that is ahead of us. And 7, a leader must inspire by change. Leaders are inspired by change. So what I understand by this is when change comes, we should not fear, right? We should not feel hopeless. As leaders, we should be inspired by change. And he says this, and I'm going to read this verbatim. The unique distinction of leaders is that they do not panic in an atmosphere of unexpected or expected change or chaos. I want you to listen to that. The unique distinction of leaders is that they do not panic, they do not fear, they do not become hopeless, unquote, in an atmosphere of unexpected or expected change or chaos. Quote, rather, these conditions provide an incentive to inspire the leader by testing his or her resolve, capabilities, potential, creativity, and spiritual reserve. So as leaders, change should not cause you to put your head down and say, woe is me. But change should empower you and inspire you to see what can I do in this season of change. Men and women are encouraged. Men and women of courage have the audacity, he says, to believe God even in the midst of impossible situation. These leaders, right? Faith leaders, women that believe God in any situation. And how often are we placed in situation, challenges, trauma, pain, and we still believe that in the midst of this chaos, in the midst of this trauma, in the midst of this pain, I still believe the promises of God. I still believe that He will never leave me or forsake me. I still believe that I am going to come out triumphantly. I still believe that He's going to provide all my needs according to His riches in glory through Christ Jesus. I still believe that nothing comes upon me unless it is sanctioned by God. I still believe. This, ladies, is the audacity of believing in a God that is the God of the impossible. Matthew 19:26 says, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. All things are possible with God. What the enemy meant for evil, God will work it out for our good. Take that as a personal testament. Take that as a personal word. What the enemy meant for your evil, God will work it out for your good. Whatever that challenge is, whatever that trauma, whatever that pain, whatever it is, stand on the promise of God that says, what the enemy meant to take me out, God is going to turn it around and make it work for my good. The eighth, we're to the end now. The eighth asset that a leader has during change is leaders grow through change. Change causes us to grow. True leaders understand that every challenge is a classroom. It is an atmosphere to grow. Change initiates discomfort, which leaders use to activate what is already in them. And the ninth one, he says, leaders benefit from change. So we grow in change. You're able to grow when there's change, and you're able to also benefit from change if you are looking through the right lenses, right? True leaders always use the unexpected, the unplanned, and the anticipated events, circumstances, and situations of life to their advantage. And the 10th asset that a leader must acquire when there's change is leaders exist for change. That's the purpose that you're a leader, to bring about change. Leaders bring about change. And he says here, quote, the very purpose and essence of leadership is to move from one known to the unknown in order to improve life and to create something better for others. That is the purpose of change. That is the purpose of being a leader, to bring about the necessary change that will benefit not only you, but it will be beneficial to those that are attached to you, to those that are in your sphere of influence, to those that God has called you to touch, right? And he says this. He gives 5 thoughts on what change is. Number 1, change, and we said that throughout this chat. Change is inevitable. Change is necessary. Change is possible. Change is here. And in conclusion, change will, what change? Here's the question for you as we conclude this chat on the Snapback Life. What will you do with change? What will you do with change? What will you do as a leader, as a woman in leadership, as a woman that has the potential and the gift to make changes, and to change the trajectory of your own life and the lives of others. What will you do with change? What will you do? We all have a responsibility to do something when there is a change. Ladies, this has been great. As I said in the beginning, that everything I talked about today was extrapolated from the masterful motivational speaker, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, in his book that has been penned for probably over 15 years. The principles and benefits of change. There are principles, ladies, that we can apply in our lives. There are strategies, there are keys that we can apply that will benefit us in our seasons of change. I am so happy that you took the time out to spend this moment with me, with the Snapback Life. And I do hope that as you move forward in the season of change, that you will be the change and the answer to someone else's prayer. Have a great day, and remember that life is a gift. Live it well. Have a great day. And remember, listen, follow me on social media, and you can go to my website if you want to learn more about the things that I'm doing. I do have a coaching program that talks about, really talks about the Snapback Life, what the Snapback Life is about. And in one simple word, the Snapback Life is our ability to be resilient. I talk about, and I use the acronym of REST, R-E-S-T, to coach women out of trauma, how to deal with and how to come out on the other side of trauma with the acronym of REST. Listen, you want to know more about it, you can, touch base with me. Go to www.thesnapback.org. Have a great afternoon, ladies, and remember that you have the power to make a change. You were created for that. Have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to the Snapback Life podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an opportunity to snap back and thrive with us. And if this message resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with your friends, your family, or anyone who could benefit from joining our powerful community of resilient women. I'm also accepting speaking engagements, so if you're looking for a dynamic keynote speaker for your next event, let's connect. You can find more details on my speaking, joining the Snapback community, and all things the Snapback Life at thesnapback.org. Again, at thesnapback.org. Until next time, remember, your comeback is always stronger than the setback.